We're joined now by several new guests who are going to speak. I'm hoping, Satyen, I think you deserve to go next because you got up earliest for this. Satyen joined us at 4:30 a.m. Canada time, and he gets the prize. And he is a very wise being who's been listening to what everyone's been saying. Satyen, do just briefly introduce yourself again and then summarize your response to some of the thoughts you've heard. How does it look from your perspective? What can we intellectuals do more and better to get peace on this planet?
Well, thanks for asking me, and welcome, good friends, and what a privilege to receive this wisdom from you elders. And I'm in Canada, I'm of Indian descent, and I've been on the forefront of human potential seminars, organizations, workshops, all involved in raising consciousness and cultivating these particular aspects we've been all talking about. So from what I've been hearing, from what I heard with David and Peter here, and not just heard, I think what's very important to value is the embodiment of the wisdom that I'm feeling here. There's so much intellectual wisdom, there's books all around us, but I feel that what we're doing here is just, in a way, we're supporting each other and we're listening to each other, but all of us are really sold on the medicine already in some way or another. I would like to see more potent expressions of these wisdoms with these elders come out to the public. There's a very different potent transmission that comes when we're hearing it from people who are living these principles over decades and decades than when we're receiving the pop wisdom of the new age wisdom of today. So what I want to emphasize here is that I believe that the richness, the depth, and the succinctness of these universal wisdoms, which are coming through in different ways, but in the same essence, what I would call three stages of consciousness: me, we, the greater all, the divine self. And David, and so who you pointed out, this your teacher, I want to get the name again, please. I took some snaps, but it was very fascinating because it seemed to be the distillation of all wisdom traditions in a very poignant and direct and applicable way. So I was very moved by that. So in summary, I would like to see people of this order of experience have a platform where these ancient wisdoms and transmissions are touching everyday people, touching young people, and that we bring young people to the footsteps of these wisdom elders like yourself, and to really enrich the next generation, because wisdom is not cool anymore. And I think the more we make it cool once again for the new generation and raise wisdom and light and love and truth back to its rightful center as the source of how we create and offer reality, then we're on the right track. So in essence, I have great gratitude, and I wish to see your work touch many more everyday human lives. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Satyen. Satyen is at the forefront of teaching basically enlightenment skills, but to managers and CEOs of companies. So in a sense, infiltrating spiritual wisdom and enlightenment into the world of work and the corporate sector and so on, which is incredibly important. If we can turn around the world of work to the light, then we're halfway to peace. Because one of the problems I'm going to be addressing in my closing remarks is the issue of capitalism wasn't intended to be a negative force on the planet. It was supposed to be about liberty, but it went wrong. It took a wrong turning and became what I've now christened war capitalism. Capitalism's made a fateful link to the military industries of the planet. And it's become the biggest business is war now. And we're seeing with the covert use of intelligence, the creation of wars ever since 9/11, which I've written a book about. So somehow we have to end war capitalism, which has taken over the planet, and persuade capitalism that actually peace is in its best interest. And that's a really difficult task. And Satyen's at the cutting edge of this with his WarriorSage work. And hats off to you, sir. Okay, so I'm going to bring our next speaker in, who is from India and who has spoken about his work in what he calls knowledge management. Siddhartha runs a thing called TRANS-BRAHM, which is a think tank in India. I believe he's just been meeting with a minister in the Indian government, which is why he's late joining our meeting. Would you like to tell us your vision of peace, sir? And welcome to the meeting here. And you're in where? In Delhi or?
Delhi, that's Delhi. I'm in Delhi.
Okay.
I'm in Delhi right now. And namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Defan. Thank you for this honor. Thank you for honoring me by inviting to speak here. Of course, I have been late because when you go to meet a union minister, then of course they have a constricted time. They are very high officials in this case. I have been pursuing my case of paleogeographic reconstruction, being an earth scientist, to most of these people, and it has been reaping good rewards by and large so far. We have been talking about seabed mining and how is it that seabed mining can go on to transform the whole of the world. What exactly can go on to be the role of knowledge mapping in this case, the topic on which I happen to be meeting a good number of people, people who are in policy making, people who can go to bring about policy intervention, people who have the capability and the capacity and the willingness to bring about a good amount of a change in the world as well. I'll just, with your permission, I'll just going to let you know about the concept of knowledge management that we have been talking about, knowledge mapping also that we have been talking about, and how is it that it can go on to bring about a certain type of a difference in the way the world goes on to see it. And then I go on to also speak from my heart what I go on to think about wisdom, intellectualism, emotional differentiation, and how is it that we intellectuals can go on to be on one single platform, on one sound footing, with a unanimity of action that we can go on to propose. First thing first, that is knowledge mapping. I mean, the topic on which we happen to be meeting a good number of people. Now, knowledge management is, knowledge mapping is going to be part of knowledge management. The concept is an evolution of, or it is evolving right now, and it is evolving essentially under the, not exactly under the vision, but it is aligning itself with the policy of the Indian government. The Indian government wants to make itself as a Vishwa Guru. I mean, translated into English, it says that it can go on to be working as a knowledge center. And why is it that they go on to say it so? And it's not my viewpoint. That's what exactly Indian policy makers think of, and they think very emphatically on this count. They do go on to think, I mean, the thinking that is pervasive in the Indian, among Indian policy makers has been that the entire of the history of India has been completely distorted. Distorted in the sense, for example, we all go on to know about the earliest civilization that existed, that was in the form of Indus Valley civilization. But then when you go on to pick up the epigraphical evidences, archaeological evidences, paleontological evidences, and now some of these evidences that you can go to obtain from oxygen isotope ratio, as well as stratigraphic evidences, you do going to find that civilization, that means civilization as we go to understand it right now, I mean, and what we going to denote, what I going to denote it, that is the first settlements and the first organized way of life that the people started leading. So that was 75,000 years back. And that was in a region in Andhra Pradesh in India. And this is what exactly has been found. So what happened at that point of a time was that there used to be settlements before that as well. And people used to make wheels, people used to People used to make utensils, people used to have a settled life also. People used to make hutments, and at least 3 or 4 different types of hutments. One of them that was conical in shape, one that was into a flat roofed, one that was having a courtyard, and so on and so forth. People used to be having an organized kitchen as well in this case. So why is it that we don't know about it? This is largely because this finding has been pretty recent, and recent in the sense that is, it has been something about some 6-7 years back. This is what we have known it. What happened was, in 75,000 years back, there was a volcanic eruption that took place in Philippines. It's called a Toba eruption. Toba eruption was responsible for initiating a mini ice age on Earth. And how is it that volcanoes can actually go to initiate mini ice age is by spewing a good amount of ash into the atmosphere. This ash acts as an obstruction to the sunlight, and as it obstructs the sunlight, the amount of radiation received by the Earth's surface goes on to get itself minimized. Consequently, the temperature goes on to become low. This is one way in which a mini ice age can be initiated. There was a mini ice age that took place in England as well. That was in the light of Krakatoa eruption that took place in 1878 and so on. And at that point of time, River Thames was so frozen that people used to play cricket on River Thames. That is accounted, that is documented, and that is something that is very, very, very well known. So a similar type of an eruption took place 75,000 years back. That was called a Toba eruption, and it buried a good number of settlements that existed in India at that point of time. And now we have got to know about the lifestyle of the people, the type of culture that they used to follow. Culture means the lifestyle that they used to follow, the type of utensils that used to be using. Now, what happened thereafter was that is India started leading a settled life, and by about 15,000 years back, they had decoded language, and Sanskrit and Tamil, these were the 2 oldest languages. Sanskrit, they started narrating it and converting it into the form of a book. So the Vedic Yuga started, Vedic age started at that point of time. That was 15,000 years back. Now from 15,000 years back to about 5,000 years back, of course I'm not narrating history, I'm just letting you know some of the recent findings that we are going to be putting it in the form of a knowledge mapping. 5,000 years back, there was a period which we're going to be calling in India as Ram Raj. That means the best governance that one can go to think of, where everything is perfect. The king is perfect, the citizens are perfect, everything is going to be perfect. And the people who go on to be worshipped in India, one person who goes on to worship India as Lord Ram, and he was born 5,563 BC. And he had an age in this case. Thereafter, it led to Mahabharata, and it was out of Mahabharata that we churned out a book that was called as Gita. Gita still happens to be the holy book for most of these people who happen to follow Sanatana Dharma, and what we're going to be calling it as Hinduism. And thereafter, it was Buddhism. Now, what has happened with the Buddhist age was 1,358 years of history in India has been completely obliterated, wiped out. I mean, it doesn't going to exist at all. So there must have been some reasons why is it that it has been so, and we are not going into reasons what exactly happened. Now, when you go on to decode this age and then go to correlate with the Greco-Roman phase, then you come to know what all happened during this and this time and during this and this age. Now, that is one part of what we go on to call it as a knowledge mapping. Mapping of the history of the country, and that is based on epigraphical evidences. That's not based on any hearsay, that is not based on any writing. It is based on a correlationship of a lot of things. Incidentally, paleogeographic reconstruction is again the correlationship of not historical facts, but of such type of facts like the study of stratigraphy, paleontology, crystallography, optical mineralogy, petrology, general geology, structural geology, meteorology, oceanography, all woven into one. And then you go to say that during 3.8 billion years of time, there was a volcanic eruption, and this volcanic eruption was responsible for formation of a rock. This rock finds itself manifested in Greenland in the form of a rock called as greenstone that is found in Gotthard area of Greenland. That is the most ancient rock that we're going to find. There has been no rock on Earth that has been dated beyond 3.8 billion years, because beyond 3.8 billion years, Earth was in a molten state, and the only solid rock having been exposed on the surface of the Earth is 3.8 billion years. Now, the mapping of it is going to be again knowledge mapping. So what we are doing with respect to knowledge mapping is that we are mapping each and every portion of the Earth with the help of satellites, which are going to be given a specific type of payloads. And when I'm going to be talking about payloads, I'm talking about charge coupled device, CCD. I'm also going to be talking about VHRR, very high resolution radiometer. And these are the satellites which are going to be sun synchronous satellites. That is, these satellites going to orbit the whole of the Earth from poles to poles, from North Pole to South Pole to North Pole, and so on. And in that process, the swath that they're going to follow, that is the path that they're going to follow, they're going to photograph it, they're going to sense it, they're going to take a thermal image of it, and then they can go on to let you know the elevation of the Earth, even when it is going to be 30 centimeters. That means 30 centimeter high elevation can also be mapped. Now, having mapped that portion, some of these things have been mapped, but not with that type of intention. Of course, Google has mapped it, United States has mapped it, NASA has mapped it in many ways, and we are also going to be doing the same thing. Now, our difference is that, the difference in our approach will be that our mapping will be essentially with an avowed aim of making the whole of the Earth, and it's converting into an application. Wherever you go to take your cursor on the application, that place will start playing its own documentary video of that place. For example, if you happen to take your cursor on Yamal Peninsula, that is in Russia right now, or in Svalbard region, in that place, you will find that there are herds of reindeer that are moving on the snow surface, and that is a sight. That is really, really a sight of sorts. That is a sight to behold, a sight to see, and a sight to enjoy. In Yamal Peninsula as well as in Svalbard region in Russia. So you can go to map it. The moment you have mapped it, you can go to descend at it from an elevation of 35,600 kilometers and go to see the whole of the Earth. And immediately the documentary of that place, that is with respect to geology, its geography, its climatic condition, its culture, its biogeography of that place, its history and philosophy inherent in all of these things that we start playing. That is one part, a static part. At the same time, there is a dynamic part as well. The dynamic part is going to be all about it. You can go to see that live. For example, if you want to see some of those conditions in Yamal Peninsula live, you can go to that place. Of course, we won't be able to see it because it will be pitch dark right now, being the Arctic region. But you will be able to see it live. Live will be able to see the wind speed of it, the movement of the people in that region. How is it that the people are going to behave in that place? Its brief history in that place. Everything will be in a documentary form, not exactly in a written form, and that will keep on getting itself updated almost every day, because every day the scenario will be changed there. Largely because the temperature will go to change, the people will go to change, the economy will go to change, the lifestyle of the people will be changed. So this way we are mapping the whole of the Earth as part of the knowledge mapping.
Dr. Siddhartha, can I just exercise a tiny bit of knowledge management and put you on pause briefly? Because I just want to introduce a couple of other speakers. We've got some other people lined up and time is short. What I would like to ask is if you could put your website into the chat, people can then look at the work you're doing. What I'd like to explain about Dr. Siddhartha is that he's a geographer, an earth scientist, as well as someone versed in Indian spirituality and philosophy. And he has a sort of overview of the world, which is second to none. And, you know, he deserves his work deserves to be looked into in great detail. So please put your website into the chat. People can look. And next time we can hear from your Brahma perspective. Perhaps you can speak about spirituality a little. We are organizing a separate conference digitally on Sanatan Dharma. Myself and Dr. Siddhartha, you're all welcome to discuss what is primordial wisdom. And we're also organizing an event on International Women's Day about the role of women in the spiritual and intellectual spheres. We haven't had enough active involvement from women, although I'm going to ask our next speaker from Monaco, who is of the fair sex, to tell us a little study report. She's the coordinator for the World Intellectual Forum in Monaco. Helena, can you tell us what you've been up to?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for all the shares. It's been amazing. I learned so much, and it's a good reminder because I was on this spiritual path and I was living in monasteries and exploring all kinds of meditation. And then the last year I'm doing a Master of International Affairs and Diplomacy at the United Nations Institute of Training and Research. And it's quite interesting to go from really being on the spiritual path to then coming down and have to focus and learning and understanding what people want. So it's quite a challenge, but I think I'm coping and I'm learning a lot and I'm enjoying it. And I'm really grateful to be able to listen to all of you and learn some more. That's all.
Okay, what is the course? Where are you studying? I mean, about history of diplomacy, or what elements are they putting into the course?
Well, they're putting, like, we're studying all the different, like Asia or Europe or Latin America. So we're learning the history of all the countries and how they got, and the wars and all of that. And also then we learn how to become diplomats and how to handle people. And also about the UN, you know, what is the UN, how was the UN created, how is the different organization in the UN working. And yeah, it's very interesting and very complicated.
Good. Well, I'm hoping when you graduated, we'll come to the ceremony, or we'll come online when you get your presentation. And are you going to spend some time in New York as an intern as part of this?
I'm hoping I will go to New York, because I was going to do something now, but then it was cancelled. But I'm hoping they will open up and I can maybe go in March or towards the summer. But I already applied for several of them, additional to the one who was cancelled. So we will see. Okay. I hope so.
Well, good luck with that. Thank you so much. Okay, so I want to move on to our next speaker, who's been waiting patiently. This is Thumbi Murali, who is from, at the moment, in Singapore, but has been very active behind the scenes with the World Intellectual Forum. And we've been generating a project that I want Satyen to be involved with, Dr. Siddhartha. Dr. Swami Nathan of India can't be with us at the moment, I'm not sure. He must have connection problems. And this is a very big cosmic project. And I'll let Murali introduce it to those of you that don't know, and I'll say a few words at the end. Dr. Murali, do remind us, what is this Universal Peace Tower and where is it going to be?
Yes, good evening everyone. Thanks for inviting me again to speak about this project. And sorry, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a small diploma engineer only. I am in no way a doctor. I am in no way a saint. I am in no way an architect to develop this peace project concept. Okay, so this peace tower project concept, I got it as a vision on Christmas Day of year 2008, though I am a Hindu. There was some various things happening until that period, right from my teenage. So that day I got some vision, kind of a vision. So I feel that it is not my own imagination, because I am not a saint, not an architect to develop like this. So I have been believing that it is a kind of Almighty's divine plan for humanity to unite in this period of human history. It can happen in a more rigorous manner than ever in the history, in a massive way. So this concept is about who is Almighty and who should we all be worshipping, putting aside all our belief systems to go to a common belief system based on science, religion, and spirituality that will be amalgamated in a convincing way, which everyone can easily accept. Yes, this is the way we should be believing our faith and be united as one. So in this peace tower, there are now three main features. One is the tower itself, about 1,500 feet high, about 460 meters. There will be a two part. One will be the lower part and another is the upper part. Both part having its own architectural view, aesthetic view. So this is a first of a kind view for the architecture in the shape I'm telling. And why it is like that, there may be some reasons why I got the concept with the shapes and sizes. So first lower part will be mostly for the office spaces, commercial, for yoga, museum, theaters, everything. The upper part will be like a upper part will be the mostly like tower. At the top will be placed a huge form of light. It is a light form representing the beginning of universe. So in many religions, there is a belief that Almighty is just a light form. So from where the humanity, everything has evolved. So we believe in that. So this is the tower. Second concept is the Universarium, where there will be a kind of a ride for about half an hour like that. During that ride, there will be some commentary given that will be an amalgamation of science, religion, and spirituality to convince the visitors about the cosmos, what is the purpose, how it all evolved, what is going on, and what will happen further. So this commentary will be given during the ride inside the Universarium. And then this third concept is about erecting of statues of all major religions all around the tower, so that the visitors, when they come from all religious background, they can feel again the oneness and they understand that every religion has a common goal of reaching the same God, Almighty. So these three main features are there in this project, and at the end of the one-day visit, there will be a good change in the mindset of the visitors for uniting, and they can also spread the message in their own circle, and thus there will be a faster way of uniting the people around the world. So now Dr. Thomas Daffen is much more serious than me in executing this project in southern tip of India. So that I think he himself can say more about that. I'm just trying to find a proper location in the spot that he has mentioned. It is an ongoing process, will be completed very soon yet. So
Okay.
that's all I want to say. Yes, thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Murali. So, so just to complement what Murali's been saying, I mean, this is a project he's been working on for over 10 years. It came to him as a vision in 2008. And every door he's knocked on has been pretty much, like shut. And I think the World Intellectual Forum, I think we should call God's bluff on this one. If God sent Murali this vision and chose him, a humble man from Singapore, let's go with it, And I think this is a beautiful vision we can actually turn into some reality. Now, the vision has been looking for a place. Okay, so we're going to build this universal peace tower, which will be on the scale of the Burj Khalifa in the Gulf states. They've started building these towers, which are over, 1,500 feet. There isn't one in India that big, apart from a couple in Delhi, which are office and accommodation buildings. There isn't one this big in London or Britain. This is 4 times the size of the Eiffel Tower. right? These are mega buildings. And that's the size and scale of the thing we're talking about. So what would we have in a tower that big? Well, it would be a world center for peace activities. It would be called the Universal Peace Tower. And it would house offices of NGOs working for peace from all over the world. It would house the UN operations like UNESCO. The university that Helena is working with, UNITAR, would have offices there. And it would have also, if the Indians can get it together, and if Dr. Siddhartha can talk his ministers into this, India could set up a new Department of Peace as a government body that would work for peace. Now, this is totally in line with Gandhi, with Nehru, with the vision of what India stands for. And I believe that, you know, the Indian government could have some floors of this tower to base its peace department in. And it would have centers for education, not just in India, but throughout the whole of the Indian cultural sphere. Winston Churchill said that the future is about empires of the mind. Well, India is an empire of the mind, if ever there was one. She invented the modern numerical decimal system. Not only that, but also Buddhism and Jainism and Gandhianism and Hinduism. The thing India does is nonviolence. So this would be a tower, a universal peace symbol, India's gift to the world. And look, to be honest, there are about 20 of these giant towers around the world. They're all office buildings working for capitalism. They're like you know, temples of capitalism. Let's just have one for peace, right? And where should it be? Well, obviously India. That's the homeland of the motherland of Dharma, right? And then also, so then the question Murali put to me is, well, where should we have it? And it came to me, I won't go into the whole details, but it came to me through a series of synchronistic revelatory experiences connected with the solstice last year, that it should be at the very southern tip of India. There's a mountain range, which is very, very sacred, because it's where not only Shiva is based, but where also a very great Indian sage used to live in meditation. And finally, it's the actual home of Avalokiteshvara, who is the great Buddha of compassion, who sees everywhere and sees all the pain and suffering of the world. In India, in China, he inspired the idea of Kuan Yin, that you'll all have heard of, the mother of compassion. Now, Avalokiteshvara's home is this place in South India, and it's called the Patala Hills, which is the origin of the Patala Palace in Lhasa. The Dalai Lama is the incarnation of Avalokiteshvara, but the real Avalokiteshvara is still there on this mountain in South India. So I think this is like, you know, so it would appeal to Buddhists throughout the world. China, Japan, Mongolia, Thailand would all fund the building of this tower, because it's giving a home to their vision of Dharma. And all people that love India, Hindus, Jains around the world, all the religious tolerated, you know, culture of India would sponsor this tower. So that's the vision. That's why Murali and I are working on this, and we're both very excited. And we've written an MOU for the World Intellectual Forum to sign with Murali to get this thing going, to get a fundraising group organized. And this could be, you know, a visionary project. The planet needs good news. We're sick of lockdowns, sick of the absurdity of this situation. So this Universal Peace Tower could be part of that really good news. And it would be, and this is why it's so important we have scientists with us working. Some of the floors would be like a museum of science for peace. It would tell the story of how scientists, great scientists like Einstein and so many others, including many of those that David Lorimer's been working on, new wave scientists, are now working for peace because they've realized consciousness is part of science. As Einstein did, you know, he said, we can't change the problems of the world except we change the way of thinking. And that's what this tower would be about. So it would showcase new science for peace, new philosophy, new interfaith spirituality. It would be a home for the World Parliament of Religions. United Religions Initiative, the Commonwealth Interfaith Network, which I set up as a Canadian, and so on and so on. So this is visionary. Okay, so, and if you want more details, just email me or Murali later. Let's move on, because time is running short, to our presentation by Dr. Arun Sikawa, who is a scientist, who lives in Agra, where the famous Taj Mahal is. Look, if India can build the Taj Mahal, surely you can build the Universal Peace Tower. you need a Mughal emperor to get this done, perhaps. Okay, Arun is going to talk to us about his research in the neurobiology of peace. So go for it, Arun.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Thomas. Is my slide up visible to everyone?
Yeah, we can see it. The science of conflict resolution. So
actually, I was in line to collect the information and making my own points about the neuroscience of conflict resolution and peace, obviously, because we have to take the peace in our hand as much as possible and get rid of the conflict from the world. So I was short in time, because of my usual work of the university. So I've taken back my neuro here, and probably in my next presentation, I will take care of this neuroscience. So, well, I'm from Agra, where Taj Mahal is there. Yeah. So I keep learning many things from you all intellectualists in this forum. So this conflict is actually nothing but nature's tax on the humanity, or we all society. Okay. So in the physics, we have read about this thermodynamics unit of entropy S. So entropy is simply a measure of random disorder and affects all aspects of daily lives. So I'm not going for the physics side, rather I'm taking in a philosophical way that entropy means randomness, and it is like a fight, conflict, murder, wars, and a lot of things that keep happening in the world. So in fact, it is the nature's tax on we all of us. So conflict is a fact of life, okay, and that leads to because of the differing perspectives, priorities, or solutions to a problem, and the misunderstanding, or we can say infodemics of misinformation, is the cause of majority of conflicts in the world. Recently, we have seen this COVID-19 pandemic, and in the early months of 2020, there was a lot of infodemics of misinformation, and there were a lot of pessimistic side news were vocally propagated through the mass media on the websites, WhatsApp, and several other media, and a lot of vocal things came up. So. And that is the mother cause of several other misunderstandings in the world. So the major causes of conflict in the world are information, that is something missing, incomplete or ambiguous things keep transferring from here to there. It could be environmental problem, like something in the environment that leads to the conflict, like a country which gets runoff water and then they start looking to the neighboring countries like that. It could be related to the skills, that people lack the appropriate skills for doing their work, and then they start getting fight with the country. It could be through values. A clash of personal values leads to the conflict. Values, mostly like, if I'm not wrong, it could be religious thoughts, fundamentalistic people that they start fighting also. And it could be through the identity, like the participant sense of identity puts them at odds with each other. So I can say like misunderstanding is one of the major cause of conflicts in the world. If we see through this borrowed diagram from the Forbes about the states where this conflict is there right now. So you can see this this heat map where this dark red means the country where the more conflicts is happening, and green part like more peaceful countries, and somewhere in between there are other peaceful countries or so. So now, as per this January 2021 on the Wikipedia, these is the heat map of, you know, conflicts. And you can see most of African countries are still having in fights, and Middle East, and some part to, you know, Southeast Asia, and it's a few countries in the Latin America. And then I gone through to see the major wars, like the countries where there were more than 10,000 or 10,000 deaths in 1 year only. So last 1 year. So this Afghanistan civil war is having death toll more than 10,000 in last year also. And second comes in Saudi Arabia, Yemeni border, and Yemen, and this all part, you know, this all started from this conflict. So I've taken from the Wikipedia. Similarly, the countries or places where there were deaths of 1,000 to like less than 10,000. And there you can see a lot of, you know, Asian African countries are there. So you can see this Uzbekistan, Somalia, and these other countries, Iraq, Mexico, they're still having some kind of, you know, conflict between these countries. And this is just summary, you know, of Syria, Egypt, Israel, Palestine, Boko Haram in Nigeria. And these are countries where still there's a lot of conflict going on, and day by day, hardly few people to few hundred, or suicide bombing, or you know, some conflict keep going on. In India, there's in too few states only, the next slide problem is still there. So what are the tentative strategies and tools to conflict resolution? So I've come across few articles that I could see that strategy, like tools that feature the strategy. It could be power politics, that is threats of force, defensive alliances, like NATO, you can say, economic sanctions by you know, powerful countries over that mediocre or poor countries, bargaining as a trade-off of interest, power mediation. Then conflict, it could be problem solving workshops, transformation, like alternative dispute resolution or reconciliation by trust commissions. It could be through structural prevention, that is electoral system design in that area where the conflict is going on. It could be by providing autonomy to group or giving state-wise, you know, autonomy. Then legal guarantee of free speech and association, and like that. Similarly, human rights also. So this way, we think about the negotiations and dialogues is one of the important thing for the dispute resolution, or bring up the peace as much as possible. However, few greedy countries to earn a lot of, you know, money or having their GDP higher side, they do a lot of, you know, arms marketing in the world. They give like some part of arms there, and then another year or second year they upgrade their weapons, and then they start selling to other countries. So it is their smart way, you know, to get their economy in this way. So we have come across, and many of my predecessors speakers have spoken about our Mahatma Gandhi ji, who used peaceful means of, you know, conflict resolution, and India got independence because of Mahatma Gandhi ji. And there's another antonym or the opposite side is the forceful means, and that we have seen recently in Hong Kong also, several other places where people try as a forceful means with their tactics to negotiate with the government, or trying to find out the conflict resolution towards the peace or so. But it's a long time consuming process, and it caused a lot of sacrifice of human population in the war, civil war or like that. So conflict resolution strategies in measure could be like these 5. However, several articles have even more. So one is avoiding, like to ignore or sidestep the conflict, hoping it will resolve itself or dissipate with the years or decades or even more time. And like technology is you know, coming up day by day, and every 25 years, next human generation comes up. So in the next generation gap, when it happens, then the ideology changes of the human population. The other one is accommodating, that is taking steps to satisfy the other party's concerns or demands at the expense of your own needs or desires, like accommodating, being like as sympathizing or empathizing to others. It could be through the compromising, that is finding an acceptable resolution that will partly, but not entirely, satisfy the concerns of all parties involved, like all stakeholders. They come up and do compromise. Okay, we will do this much, you do this much, and then let's have a peace. Other could be competing. That means to satisfy their own desires at the expenses of other parties involved. This happens when a country is more powerful, then because of power nature, it has more competing. And then other one is collaborating, finding a solution that entirely satisfies the concerns of all involved parties. So in resolve conflict through the dialogue is one of the best method. Even India got independence because of Mahatma Gandhi and even other several prominent freedom fighters. And dialogue is the best way for resolving any conflict. And then by dialogue, one can do negotiations and coming up, churn objectives, common objectives, where one can do this negotiations to resolve this conflict. So transforming conflicts through we can say trust. Trust is necessary. Otherwise, like if you have no trust, then treaty gets failed and negotiations or MOU gets failed. So trust should be there with both parties. There should be empathy. Like people should feel the empathy. Then they stop feeling pain in themselves. It is not that murdering the other army people or so. And dialogues. So it could be like this. In this cartoon is giving that conflict, explore the issues, start the conversation, find common ground, and then make possible process visible, discover solutions, etc. Now, empathy, sympathy, and compassion. Now it comes the property of the mind. So in the world, like 7.4 billion people are there. By birth, neuroanatomically, if we think about, then the human brain is the same. It is very defined, 1.4 kg weight, mass of, some 86 billion neurons and equally or even more glial cells and very precise neural circuitry, and having 4 lobes, frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal. They have a similar feature. Neurons are same, neurophysiology is same, human physiology is same. So we all are equal in that way, like Homo sapiens, so means the physiology is same. But the mind is on different level to everyone, at the different age-wise also, and in different population also. And that gives how we used to say that someone is intellectualist and someone is just mediocre person and someone is even poor or non-educated or uneducated or having no ethics and morals and common sense. So mind we develop with our formal education, like universities we used to go, we achieve PhD or something or like that, or whatsoever, not necessarily PhD, I can say any. And another one is informal education that we receive from the society and parents. So empathy, sympathy, and compassion, these are the properties of the mind, not the brain, because not everyone has the same kind of, a quantum of this all components. So empathy means that you feel what a person is feeling, okay? Empathy, like being in the shoes of someone. Sympathy is just making a slightly, okay, means you can understand that a person is feeling, like you just say, okay, you are feeling a pain. And compassion is, application of part, that willingness to relieve the suffering of another. Okay, so all three are more or less, interchangeable terms. So empathy includes the emotional state of the person as well as one's own emotional state. However, sympathy is consciously sharing the emotional state of someone else. Now, if we see these 3 pictures, then certainly, I'm sure all of us would have come across the empathy that, oh, so poor, probably they are malnourished and they are not having any food. And probably if I would have been there, then I would have shared my food with the babies. So this is the one classical example of empathy. Now, a few other terms like pity, sympathy, empathy, and compassion. These are, more or less similar, but with the degree of engagement, they are a bit different. So pity is just acknowledging someone's suffering. Oh, just like example is this, oh no, such a shame that happened. Sympathy is, I care about your suffering, while empathy is, I feel your suffering. So empathy is more important that way. And empathy is part of the limbic system of the brain that in some extent I've already explained in my previous lecture. And next month, possibly, I will be having my more on the neurobiological perspective and related to the limbic system and this empathy. And then compassion, that is, I want to relieve your suffering, like offering a solution, that is the compassion. So it is necessary by the party or negotiator to give both the stakeholders these all themes. So empathy means stepping into other parties' shoes and seeing their view of conflict situation through their eyes and not through your eyes. Empathy and sympathy related processes such as compassion are recognized to play positive key roles in the social relationship. Now, social neuroscience also takes part in. Social neuroscience means when we talk about not only on an individual basis, the neuroscience, beauty of neuroscience, but on a holistic or on a collective way. This also I've explained in one of my previous lectures, like social neuroscience. So empathy is crucial to conflict resolution. If you don't come up with the empathical point of view between both stakeholders, then certainly we cannot negotiate and probably we cannot finish up any conflict. So mediators or facilitators that Professor Thomas and you all have come across several moments that you used to explain that you were there decades back or so as a mediator. So can empathize through finding something within their own character or experience that resonates with both or all the parties. So mediators leads to them forge stronger connections, build trust, increase understanding between stakeholders, and empathizing helps mediators to identify a party's concerns and sacred values. This is important. Now, one more thing comes up, theory of mind. So theory of mind, it is the ability to attribute mental states like beliefs, intents, desires, emotions, empathy, and sympathy to ourselves and to others, like between the people involved who are coming on one table to resolve some issue. It is the ability to attribute mental states to ourselves and others, serving as one of the foundational elements for social interaction. And theory of mind also provides the ability to predict and interpret the behavior of others. So one has to understand this behavior. This is the ability to infer the emotional state of another person. And empathy involves generating an appropriate response to the emotional state of others. So like if we see this is theory of mind, where like how child are feeling, one guy said, so another one also feel the same kind of tone. It is an important social cognitive skills. It involves developing a sense of what others are thinking. It helps us to form our responses. Now coming to the empathy, the study of the empathy goes to the discovery of mirror neurons. And mirror neurons, as the name itself, mirror. So mirror neuron is a neuron that, okay, what happens in the neuron? Neurons are electro-excitable cells in the human body. And there's a lot of, electrical firing happens when the neuron are active and during their physiological active situation. So like in the mirror neurons, when a person is doing the same job or the other person is doing the same job, but you feel the same kind of feelings, like you feel salivation when you are eating something, or second time you are seeing someone else eating something and then you start having own salivation. It means you are showing the mimicry, like as if you are doing the same work. So there's a kind of mimicry word you might have heard. The mimicry is a pervasive phenomenon in the animal kingdom. What imitation certainly achieves its highest form in the humans. Imitation is the highest in the humans, this degree. Several authors have often associated imitation with the ability to empathize and to understand others' mind. A mirror neuron is a neuron that fires both when an animal acts, including a human, I'm telling here, and when the animal observes the same action performed by another. The neuron mirrors the behavior of other as if the observer were itself acting that same job. And macaque monkeys were, in 1990s, this phenomena was discovered in macaque monkeys, and later on in the birds, and later on it was found in the humans also. And in human brain, these mirror neurons have been found in the premotor cortex. Premotor cortex is like upper part of the gray matter of the human brain. Premotor cortex, the supplementary motor area, and primary somatosensory cortex, and inferior parietal cortex. They are more these mirror neurons. And Rizzolatti group, they were doing a lot of experiments for several years, and then they gave this paper as a form and submitted to the Nature. And first time in 1994, yeah, I think so, this paper was rejected, saying that mirror neuron phenomena, such kind of thing cannot happen, and it is not possible. And later on, this was found very true. And the same group published another empirical paper about the mirror neurons in the human Broca's region, was homologous to the monkey's ventral premotor cortex. One is in University of California, Valayanu Ramakrishnan. He is also working on mirror neurons, and he's having 2 TEDx talk on the mirror neurons related to, you know, things in the humans. So I will finish up my lecture here, Professor Thomas, and this neurobiological part I will come up with having, you know, this conflict resolution involvements in my next lecture. But I will come across with how this peace and negotiations and conflict resolution can be done by mind mapping, or by having this you know, mirror neurons, empathy, how we can inculcate and how we can force more, you know, in the person, so that peace can arise up.
Well, thank you so much. That was a brilliant overview. And next month you must go into more detail. I feel you were just beginning when you were talking about mirror neurons.
Thankful to you that you gave me that United States Institute of Peace, that hint of that YouTube, and then I explore all the videos. And yes, it is through the mind we can change the mind of people. And
I think this knowledge should be taught to diplomats like Helena in training at UNITAR. There should be a whole course on the neurobiology of peace, the neurophysiology of peace. Yes. Okay, so look, we've come to the end of our time slot. We've gone on slightly longer. We have a 2-hour booking, but I want to just thank everybody and say a few concluding words to round up our conference today. So I think what we're trying to do here is, it's like a mosaic job. Each of us coming from different perspectives. Some are scientists, some are humanitarian researchers, philosophers, different kinds of experts, consciousness studies we've heard from, people working at the cutting edge of business and so on. I think one thing we can all agree on, I mean, we're coming from different perspectives, but peace is going to involve a paradigm shift of some kind for humanity. We can't go on as we've been going on. It's got us to a pandemic possibly leaked from bioweapons research. We've all watched in horror. It's like watching a train coming to the cliff and the bridge is down and none of us can stop it. So, you know, us little intellectuals, we're all tiny, but we may be able to get somehow our finger on the brake and try and stop this train. Or just change the paradigm that humanity's on. So each of you, I take my hat off to all of you and all those that weren't able to speak. I know you're all pioneers in your own way. Sometimes it can feel very lonely. And I know, for instance, Una's been under a lot of attack in the press. You know, it's ridiculous. But this happens. Intellectuals are usually the ones to get shot at. And if you're not being shot at, then you're not very good, you know. Look at the numbers of intellectuals who've been martyred, assassinated, or pilloried. Even one of our founders found himself under attack in India. You know, it's like, and this is, I think, something that we could talk about another time, which is, you know, the whole move towards cyber warfare. For instance, just to give you a little snippet, I was living in Scotland and I oppose Brexit fiercely. I love Scotland. I feel her voice was completely ignored. And so there's all kinds of problems about Scotland and England. Will the UK survive? This is a huge topic I'm not going to go into now, but I feel very strongly that Scotland should have the freedom to decide. And yet, I can assure you the UK intelligence are doing everything they can to take that choice away and to prevent Scotland having a free choice about her future. So who actually has the right to deploy intelligence agencies? This is a constitutional crisis going on in English-Scottish relations at the moment. I won't go into huge details. I think that intelligence agents should not snoop on people in their own countries, you know, but there's nothing to prevent them. And now, of course, this is all going on online. So I introduced a bill for a cyber peace treaty, because it goes on between nations, Russia, Britain, China, America. There's been absolute meltdown in the last couple of years, especially with conspiracy theories everywhere. And most of them are false. Most of the conspiracy theories have been created to just, you know, make us all distrust each other. So one of the jobs for intellectuals now is to sort out true conspiracies from false ones. It requires a whole bunch of new skills that they don't teach this at UNITA, I can tell you. But this is how we're going to prevent wars in the next 50 years, because these wars will be wars of the mind, wars of identity and culture, nationality, religion. And the powers that be of war capitalism are trying to exploit differentiation to try and create these conflicts. What we have to stand for as intellectuals is unity and insist on peace through unity. And that's why the work you're all doing is so important. I also want to give you an equation. It's very simple. Science plus spirituality equals peace. You know, the scientists of the world were great thinkers. I'm a lover of science. I've taught courses at the University of Oxford on the history of science. You know, I regard the work I'm doing as scientific, but I want more science, not less. Scientists have become corrupted by the military industrial complex, by war capitalism, and to some extent war communism. What we have to do is get science back with conscience and spirituality. So science plus spirituality can lead the way to peace. Science is brilliant. It's international. It knows no boundaries, but it has to stand above, you know, the nation state's interests, and it has to not prostitute itself to the war machinery, which is why it's so important we do things like build the Universal Peace Tower. That will be a haven for authentic peace scientists. And as some of you know, I'm proposing a similar project in the US. Satyen and I have been in discussions about this, to build a nonagon, the top floor over the Pentagon, a massive, huge visionary project, courtesy of Leonardo da Vinci, where America would use its greatest brains to think through peace instead of conflict and war. That would be a paradigm shift. That's what I'm talking about. And it's, you know, it's got to be done. It's either that or it's self-destruction as a planet. Okay. So how do we get spirituality and science to work together? Well, David, who only showed us a tiny, teeny bit of his wisdom, unfortunately, and if you want to really hear more detail, then please go to his Batgap interview with Rick Archer. I'll you know, email everyone the link. It has to come through recognizing consciousness and conscience as part of science. You see, if you have a science without consciousness or conscience, there's no ethics. So I have nothing against materialist science and the discoveries of chemistry and physics and biology. What I have against is saying that that's the only truth. That's flatland. No, if we bring back consciousness into the picture, then we get authentic science. Now, I'm a great fan of Leibniz, actually. In the disputes between Newton and Leibniz, I think Leibniz actually had the upper hand, because he insisted on keeping an intelligent, active, involved God in the picture. He didn't quite know how to do it, but he wanted his God to be part of this call. Leibniz's God is here with us. Newton's isn't. Newton's is somewhere else, the other side of the universe, not really interested. And Leibniz said, no, that's not good enough. We've got to have consciousness. That consciousness that we all have is our little bit of God energy. And so, so this work that David is doing and others, and I'm very excited by, you know, the people that are involved, like the World Indigenous Science Network that David's in touch with. Because these indigenous people have known this all along, like my dear Canadian and American Indian friends, like the pagans of Europe that Marco Fren is in touch with, like the Druids I work with. This knowledge has never been lost. It just got suppressed and written out of the narrative. So anyway, that's my third equation. Ethics plus consciousness plus conscience equals peace. And interestingly, in France, we have un mot, la conscience. Ça veut dire la conscience and consciousness. They don't have two words for consciousness and conscience. It's the same thing. And in UNESCO, in French, it says, wars begin, you know, in the mind of man. Therefore, dans la conscience de l'homme, on doit les finir. Okay, my next little equation scientifically is history plus universalism plus global philosophy equals peace. Now, I'm a historian. I studied, you know, in the shadow of Toynbee at the University of London. I studied world history. I did every course I could. I did more courses. And because I'm Canadian, I see things from a global perspective. But I'm very disappointed. Historians are parochial. They write little national histories. We need historians that work on global history. And when I studied philosophy, likewise, very parochial. You get taught the philosophy of your culture, your tradition. We need global philosophy, where you're taught every religion. That's the point of the periodic table I've created for all the religious traditions and philosophies to get involved and understand each other. You can't be literate in philosophy unless you understand all the philosophical systems and all the religious systems of the planet. That should be your basic right. I don't care if you're in Europe or America or Asia or China. That's our birthright as human beings, to have access to all that wisdom. And so that history plus universalism plus global philosophy equals peace. And then, so as some of you know, I'm working on a whole new field of history. I'm trying to undo the errors of Newton, because Glenn Martin blames Newton for this whole mess we're in. He's on our board of the World Intellectual Forum. He's just written a cutting-edge paper criticizing Newton for our current state of affairs. And I think Newton did his best, you know. He was a bit limited. He had a rather simple Bible studies knowledge. He had a rather simple apocalyptic theory. He wasn't sophisticated enough in biblical theory, but he was a genius. And in the third volume of Principia Mathematica, he said, finally, I've explained how gravity works. I've explained the mathematics of moving bodies. But what I haven't been able to do is explain how it happens and why. I've taught you the equations governing gravity, but I can't explain where it comes from or how. And I do think, however, that it's got something to do with God. And what I mean by that is a divine spirit that's suffused everywhere in a very subtle form throughout the universe. Now, he then leaves the book there. That's the end of it. That's in what's called the General Scholium at the end of Principia Mathematica. And Newton was a great fan of Solomon. He took that concept of a subtle spirit diffused everywhere from the writings of Solomon, his wisdom literature. What I've done in my book, Principia Mathematica of Religions, is create this new field called religious mathematics. And I'm trying to write the sequel to the Principia and saying, okay, thanks, Newton, you did great, we love you. But now we have to have a whole new discipline called religious mathematics. And we have to work out the equations of how that subtle spirit actually suffuses throughout all nature and how it manifests as consciousness in each of us. That's the work of future science plus spirituality equals peace. So that's what I've been doing. I'm on the 3rd volume and it's very, very intensive. I've been working on this. So religious mathematics equals peace. And I'd encourage anyone that's interested in mathematics and spirituality to, you know, contact me and help. And finally, the politics that has been addressed by Peter and others, and David touched on this. I think global self-government equals peace. There's a whole sort of split between the world government people like Glenn Martin and others who want a global government and they want the UN to have more powers and so on and so on. And then there's the decentralists who want to follow Leopold Kohr and break down even existing nations. They want to leave the EU. They want to break up existing nations and make them all smaller, like Rousseau, you know, a whole bunch of little city-states self-governing. Well, I'm proposing we do both simultaneously, which is, I know it's paradoxical, but this is me applying religious maths to the problem, like Nagarjuna, who said, any polarity, you do both. This is the antidote to the polarized thinking that's bedeviling humanity. If we do global self-government, now this was Gandhi's vision, it was also Christ, we each of us are autonomous sovereign individuals in charge of our own self-development and self-evolution. We pursue the path of ethics, we tell the truth, we act kindly and politely and righteously. That's global self-government, right? We act as if the kingdom of God's already here and we're answerable to the kingdom of God direct, okay? But we do this globally, whether you're in India, China, France, Ireland, whatever. You adopt non-violence and righteousness as your creed. And that way, the need for these outer terrorist governments fades away, which is Peter's point of sort of, you know, self-realization equals voluntary anarchy when nirvana rules. So the N of anarchy is actually the same as the root of the word nirvana, which is the nothingness. But that nothingness is also the all, as our scientists are now discovering. The plenum that the Gnostics used to talk about is what they now call dark energy, or the ether of consciousness. And there's new research being done that the dark energy is actually the ether that they all said didn't exist. It's come back in as the ether of consciousness. Okay, so I want to announce one final thing for our colleague Marco Hren, who's not here, tragically. He must have got the times wrong. He has spoken here before. He runs the Indigenous Wisdom Council of Slovenia. He's on the board of the World Intellectual Forum for Europe here. And he he's based around Ljubljana, but also Kobarid, which is, there's a peace museum in Kobarid, which was in the front line between the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Italy during World War I. And it was a slaughter as bad as the Somme, but it's been forgotten about. And anyway, the good news is the European cultural capital is going to be Kobarid and the Socha River Valley in the year 2025. And Marco and I are discussing what role the World Intellectual Forum can play. We're going to have 7 days of thinking and events around consciousness, spirituality and peace in Kobarid, courtesy of the European Union's European Cultural Capital Award, which brings, you know, lots of kudos and contacts and so on. So I you know, that's exciting. Marco is in touch with the mayor of Kobarid. And if you haven't been to the Peace Museum in Kobarid, when we get out of lockdown, at least come to the events we'll be planning there, because it is shocking. There's one photograph on the wall of the Hungarian, Austro-Hungarian Imperial Army being given mass by a Catholic priest. He's holding up the wafer and they're all kneeling about to receive the body of God before they go into battle against an Italian army who are all Catholics doing the same thing. And to me, this symbolizes the absurdity of war. People who subscribe to the same belief system, they're all one body, are about to slaughter each other, you know. And this is why we have to grow out of this nonsense of war, and why we as intellectuals have a cutting edge duty to do that. Okay, so look, I'm going to you know, finish there. We've gone on a bit longer than we should, half an hour, but I hope it was worth your time. My hat off to all of you, brothers and sisters of the light, and to those helping behind the scenes, Nicola Haig particularly, our media coordinator. Hello, Nikki. So bless you all, and next time we'll have hopefully more interaction. Anyone else want to say a final little word of wisdom? David.
Thomas, I just got I've got one important book to recommend.
Yeah.
Which is this one.
Mikhail ought to be on the World Intellectual Forum. Do you have
what is at stake now?
Yeah.
It's absolutely key reading. And
he was a great influence on me. If you have his email, we can invite him formally to join.
If you're sending an email round, then I will. I can then attach my review, which I did with the book on the Dalai Lama. And this is an interesting book, not necessarily an important one, which is the philosophical writings of Frederick the Great. And this has just come out, and there's a brilliant analysis called Anti-Machiavelli, and written when Frederick the Great was 28 in 1740. And it's quite remarkable how astute the whole thing is, and also in relation to his own knowledge of history. So I'll be reviewing that in a few days.
Okay, well, no, do send details of both those books. I'll circulate them. Frederick the Great was actually a very clever intellectual who happened to also be the head of Prussia.
Exactly.
His danger was that he liked wars too much, but otherwise he was on the side of the angels. You know, very clever man. So thanks for that. And the Gorbachev one, yes, please send me the details. And when I went to Moscow in 1990 for the first time, I was elected coordinator of philosophers of peace around the world. Gorbachev was still in power, and he was patron of the conference of philosophers of peace that elected me as coordinator. And we normally have a few Russians at this meeting, and they're not here today, sadly. But yeah, send Gorbachev our love and tell him we're still flying the flag of his vision of a rational, you know, social system combined with a peace orientation. Because we owe to Gorbachev the end of the Cold War, the fact that we're still here, actually. And we need more like him. Una, you're trying to come in.
Yeah, could I ask, would you kindly stay online after the meeting? I need to discuss something very important with you that's just arisen.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Have a quick chat.
You can have a private chat, by all means.
Thanks very much, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Una.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter, do you want to add a final blessing?
I would like to simply say that learning is not opposed to anarchism. The state is not the only sponsor and of learning and knowledge. And Senate House, I also been to, and the British Museum. All these things are great institutions outside, though they're financed by the state, they're outside it. I mean, someone like, also I'll very quickly point out that Tolstoy wrote a book called The Kingdom of God is Within You, and his reading of the Sermon on the Mount made him an anarchist, and he came to the conclusion that all governments are forms of organized violence. And in India, for instance, Gandhi, he said, my long-term belief is enlightened anarchy. So, and as you said, the Buddhists are quite close papers in that notion of nirvana. But I think a self-rule or decentralized forms of direct democracy are not necessarily opposed to anarchy. I think anarchism has been spoiled by its link perhaps with violence in the past, but the majority of anarchists have been quite peaceful and gentle pacifists. And as I pointed out, in particular, Gandhi and Tolstoy, and they were both long-term seeking a form of anarchism, that is to say, a form of self-government, direct democracy. That, as Proudhon pointed out, that anarchy is order. It's mainly the main disorder in the world created by states and governments. So if you want to get peace as a long-term project, which obviously you do, and the World Forum does, that has to be realized, not necessarily through the governments and states, although we can try and persuade them to change their ideas and their conflict, but it's more concerned with the people themselves and how they live and how they act.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's very
and believed.
Very wise words, Peter, as ever. And I hope you will carry on for years still with your amazing books that Peter has written. Is Kaushala Prasad Mishra there? This is a scientist in India who's been involved with the World Intellectual Forum. I'm not sure if he can hear me, but he's a radiographer and has been involved in Asian radiography. Kaushala, can you unmute? And then just say a few words to conclude, and we're coming to the end now.
Well, I apologize that my system has been not responding. So most of the things I couldn't hear and couldn't grasp. So, but now it is working, I notice. So I'm really very sorry for this inconvenience. But this situation in the world is going to a different pattern. And what I see in India as well as in US makes me seriously think that perhaps society is deviating too drastically from the expected norms of the society. What is happening now in democracies, perhaps there is a need to rethink that how people at the moment are even going to close to violent paths without thinking as humans how we should behave. One of the concerns that these days I have been having is the social trend that is happening looks to be going in dangerous situation.
It is.
And in America, I have been aghast to see that the majority of people are still not able to see what is truth. And they are more behaving on emotion that in democracies, the reason is going out, and emotion, I would call even misinformation, is too much with the people. So about society, it's really alarming situation, and I do not know which way our forum can play a role.
Well, I think we have a huge
What do you think,
duty.
Thomas?
Yeah. I mean, Kaushala Mishra is a great classic scientific intellectual. I wish there was time. Next time, hopefully you can come on sooner and give a more considered sharing. But this question you've raised of truth is central to our work. I think if you'd have heard David Lorimer's talk, he had truth in the title. And even though you weren't able to hear it live, you'll be able to watch the recording. Listen carefully to David's talk. He talked about truth. And Satya is the point of things like the Universal Peace Tower. We are a Satya project, the World Intellectual Forum. Trying to, and you're absolutely right. The demons we're up against are false emotion, false thinking, misinformation, and they're all based on lies. In Zoroastrianism, the wicked forces are caused by Druj, which is the lie. The Seoshant, which is the collective Messiah that David talked about, Ben Sadunov talked about, the Christ within all. The only weapon we have is truth. The only weapon we have to manifest the collective Christ energy is truth. And that's why, as a philosopher, I love it when philosophers finally start talking about truth.